truly knows from where all of creation had originated, whether there was a supreme being who willed it or whether it did not? Perhaps creation formed itself, or perhaps it did not. That all-pervasive one who oversees all of creation, that omniscient one knows. Or maybe even that supreme one does not know. These are the concluding lines of the Nasadiya Suktam, a Sanskrit hymn in the 3,500-year-old Rig Veda. The Nasadiya Suktam concerns itself with cosmology. It raises questions about when, why, through whom or what did the universe come into being, and it provides no answers. Carl Sagan, who is a renowned American astronomer, had quoted the Nasadiya Suktam and said this was an early example of India's tradition of skeptical questioning and unself-conscious humility before the great cosmic mysteries. The Nasadiya Suktam asks, who truly knows? Perhaps there is an omniscient creator who does know, or maybe even the creator does not know. This hymn elegantly demonstrates a capacity for ambivalence. It marvels humbly at creation and simultaneously questions the omniscience of the creator. At the heart of this suktam is a complete acceptance of uncertainty. This hymn provides no hubristic claims about knowing, it only encourages unknowing. This poetic wisdom of unknowing is incredibly relevant for our current politically polarizing times. My work as a transdisciplinary social scientist positions me at the nexus of academia, policy, and humanitarian impact. So, allow me to invite you to reflect on the following questions that are constantly being debated across classrooms, political spheres, and dinner tables. Should abortions be legalized? Should homosexual marriages be criminalized? Should capital punishment be abolished? These are polarizing questions that tend to elicit diverse opinions depending on whom you ask. My aim is not to provide any answers to these questions, but to analyze how differing stances are contingent upon a panoply of factors, including but not limited to one's geographical location, one's racial and ethnic background, one's socioeconomic class, one's religious beliefs or lack thereof, one's educational status, one's political inclinations, one's gender and sexual orientation, one's epigenetic disposition, one's historical exposure to prejudice or privilege, and one's values and cultural moorings on the centrality of the individual or the prioritization of the collective. This, of course, is not an exhaustive list of the various factors that shape the dimensions of an individual's positionality, but it enables us to peek into the complexity that we are grappling with when analyzing why is it that different individuals may have radically diverse motivations on any given issue. The philosopher Linda Alcoff writes that as individuals, we inhabit multiple identities that are fluid and dialogical in nature, contextually situated, and continually amended and reproduced. So, it would be quixotic to assume that there must be a homogeneity in our understanding of the world, that we should all have a monolithic stance on abortion, capital punishment, or homosexual marriage, among other matters. To perceive that if others agree with our truth, then they are right, and those who dissent are wrong, is a condescending exercise of reductivism. We must resist this hubris or excessive arrogance in believing that our truth can be the only truth. Unfortunately, this is easier said than done. Historically speaking, humanity hasn't aced the collective group project of accepting multiple truths. Instead, what we have collectively aced at is what social theorists call othering. Those who are different from us, or those who are perceived to be different from us, and those who dissent from us are categorized as the other and denigrated as inferior, irrational, and immoral. The French philosopher and historian Michel Foucault has incisively argued how this process of othering is a function of socio-political power. It's how societies establish hierarchies of domination. My research explores the ideology of colonialism and its impact that persists at the level of the individual, interpersonal, and collective across Asian societies. I interrogate, how is it that certain norms come into place? Why do we normally assume some people and practices to be superior versus inferior, progressive versus regressive, civilized versus uncivilized? I question, why are these binary delineations made, and what are the implications of these dichotomies? Indeed, many of these norms and taken for granted assumptions that pervade several post-colonial societies are neither natural nor are they neutral. They are byproducts of colonialism. They were exported from the West and imposed upon several parts of the non-Western world through the trajectories of colonialism to establish, maintain, and perpetuate power asymmetries, to conquer, colonize, control, and commodify the colonized people and their resources. The political psychologist Ashish Nandy has compellingly argued how colonialism emerges out of a worldview that naturalizes certain hierarchies, that believes in the absolute superiority of human over nature or human over the non-human, of masculine over feminine, of modern over traditional, of heterosexual over queer. The colonized people were equated by colonizing authorities as subordinate in all of these regards. They were equated as inferior, irrational, effeminate, juvenile, regressive, barbaric heathens. Under this worldview, it was thus the moral responsibility of colonizing forces to undertake a mission of civilizing the uncivilized non-European other. This meant universalizing their ideological systems by educating the colonized societies about the superior language, religion, culture, socio-political, economic, and legal systems of the colonizers, while at the same time oppressing or obliterating the so-called subordinate ideological systems of the colonized people. Racism, sexism, and anthropocentrism were operationalized as ideological instruments of truth to control, conquer, commodify the colonized people. It was used to justify the colonial project that resulted in horrific genocides, ecological destruction, and brutal psychological violence in colonized societies. Unfortunately, we cannot consign these atrocious injustices of history into the dustbin of the past because its legacies are still playing out in the present. The global North's continued extraction, extermination, and exploitation of the rights and the resources, the labor and the land of people across the global South through neoliberal globalization is a part of this history of dominion. Othering, both people and their ecology, has continued for well over 500 years and still defines our geopolitical realities. It is from this anxiety that other truths threaten our truth, that there can only be a singular truth, that we are fueled to dismantle and diminish the difference of the other. But if we seek to embrace diversity, then we need to release these arrogant or hubristic insecurities that compel us to monopolize our truth and marginalize other truths as false. The antidote to this hubris is humility. Humility transcends our insecurities. Humility emerges from a stable self-esteem that doesn't require universal validation and pursues these acts of performativity in order to receive universal validation. True humility also doesn't self-effacingly undermine one's value. True humility gives us the courage to face uncertainty rather than fear it. to say I don't know instead of pretending to know all of the answers, to say I was wrong rather than adamantly claiming that I was right. Humility enables us to listen to ideas that make us reflect, not just those that reinforce our subjective truths. It keeps us open to the possibility of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Humility empowers us to expand our vistas so that we can accommodate multiplicity. Hubris rejects diversity. Humility honors diversity. We are often bamboozled by the hypnosis of hubristic conditioning to believe that the self and the other are disparate. But the self is always constituted by the other. There cannot be a self if there is no other. As the poet and Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore has beautifully suggested, you and the other are the same being in different uniforms. Hubris demarcates the self from the other. Humility dissolves the self and the other. This made me realize, to embrace external diversity, we must first honor our internal diversity. A few years ago, I was in the mire of a devastating heartbreak. During this period, I was predominantly experiencing this state of ambivalence. There is a captivating Pakistani song that artfully captures the state of ambivalence. It caught global attention, and some of you might have heard it. This song is called Pasuri, which is a Punjabi word that translates roughly to complicated mess. In the song, there is a line that goes, "If you were poison, I would drink all of it," showing the grief and agony of this heartbroken lover. He essentially expresses to his elusive beloved that I want you so much that I am willing to relinquish my life if it promised a union with you. And then, in another line, he sings to this unattainable beloved that I hope you fall in love and I hope it breaks your heart, showing the rage that this loss has brought upon himself, cursing the other to experience that same agonizing pain of unfulfilled love. The ambivalence of wanting both to sever a connection and to cling on to it resonated with millions and myself. Pasuri provided an avenue to enunciate the paradoxical emotions that the maelstrom of grief and loss brings upon oneself, of both an obsessive pining and an acute repulsion for the same person. Fascinatingly, this Pakistani song topped Indian music charts for weeks, occupying the first position. While this song is about the personal anguish of longing, it simultaneously is, as the journalist Priyanka Mathu notes, an apt metaphor for the relationship between India and Pakistan, two countries in perpetual conflict whose histories and cultural touchstones are inextricably intertwined. Their separation, orchestrated by British colonialism's divide and rule legacies, continue to haunt their present-day realities. But through art and culture, their artificially constructed borders repeatedly blur, even if only for fleeting moments. The ambivalent relationship between these two countries epitomizes Pasuri, a complicated mess. Ambivalence, both personal and political, is weighed heavy with contradictions. As we oscillate between opposing perspectives, we attempt to reconcile this tension, and sometimes we do arrive at a resolution. But in most situations, as the brilliant Belgian psychotherapist Esther Perel puts it, in most situations, holding the ambivalence is in itself a form of radical acceptance. It was this radical acceptance that healed my own suffering and liberated me to equanimity. This radical acceptance requires us to sit with ambiguity rather than rush toward monovalent binaries or convenient categories. The greater our ability to hold ambivalence within ourselves, the better we accommodate difference outside ourselves. The more we honor internal ambiguity, the more we embrace external diversity. As we accept the uncertainty of the self, thus we enable the multiplicities of the other. This is perfectly reflected in Heisenberg's indeterminacy principle, also known as the uncertainty principle, a fundamental concept in quantum mechanics. It enabled the possibility of inventing multiple creative technologies, including our cell phones. This was me attempting to demonstrate the uncertainty principle. The uncertainty principle states that we can't simultaneously know both the position and the momentum of a particle with complete determinateness. The more we know about one property, the less we know about one property. At the risk of diluting the science, to explain this simply, the uncertainty principle teaches us that the more we know, the less we know. Who really knows? The Nasadeo Suktam asked. It offered no determinate answers. It only provided the invitation to meditate on unknowing. Unknowing is sitting with ambiguity, holding ambivalence, and accepting uncertainty. Unknowing is not a rejection of knowledge, it's a recognition of its limits. When we renounce the hubris of pretending to know everything and delve with humility into unknowing, then we journey into deeper wisdom. When we incubate in the uncertain, ambiguous, and ambivalent space of unknowing, then we unleash profound creativity. In the words of Deepak Chopra, one of the greatest luminaries of our times, the known is the prison of the past. The unknown is the source of all creativity. The Vedas inspired me to some of my own creativity, to unleashing some of my own creativity. And so I'd like to offer this to all of you in closing. This is titled, The Freedom of Unknowing. In a divisive world, imprisoned with polarizing opinion, the freedom of unknowing becomes a superpower. To resist the hubris of binaristic dominion and humbly honor multiplicity is the need of the hour.